why are you not a senior innovation engineer?
Welcome to the Innovation Engineer podcast, your favorite place for picking brains of your favorite engineers. So grab your nerdiest mug and fill it with your beverage of choice and enjoy. My name is Tarek.
And my name is Vashi.
And today we are talking about senior engineers. So Vashi, actually this idea came from you. So maybe you want to jump in and present your topic.
Yes, totally. Well, actually I have a question for you, Tarek. You're an innovation engineer, but why are you not a senior innovation engineer?
Yeah, and it's a very, very nice question. First of all, the company that I work in, we don't have senior innovation engineers. So when I started, I was the only innovation engineer because this role did not exist. And the question was, how do you want to name yourself? And I came up with innovation engineer because this is kind of the thing that I'm doing, software engineering specialized in innovation. And so it never occurred that we could or should or would introduce this kind of ranking. And so it simply did not exist. If we talk about the qualities of a senior engineer or a principal engineer or something like that, this is something else. But this is actually a very, very interesting aspect of this question. So is it actually necessary to have this kind of title? So how do you name yourself, Vashi?
Well, I just named myself principal engineer, but it was actually a title given to me because I actually also don't care about titles, but I know a lot of people for whom it's important. And let me tell you a really small story. So I started being a software engineer in 2010, and I became a senior software engineer for the first time in 2013. And do you know the reason why I became senior engineer?
I have no idea.
It was very simple because I worked in that company for 3 years. That's all the reason there was. So first of all, it's like kind of their career path. Yeah, back in the time you first became senior engineer, then kind of software architect, senior software architect. Those were the titles. And later on, you would normally be required to be a manager if you wanted to make more money. So like it was really kept actually, this being an engineer. And they made me a senior engineer because it looked better if we tried to get a new project. If you have a senior engineer and like 3 years, that's enough experience, be a senior engineer.
Yeah. I mean, I believe it's quite typical that a company, especially if you are working in some kind of agency and they can charge more for seniors, that they have a motivation to make you a senior as soon as possible without actually having a look at your skill level or other aspects. Simply being 3 years in the company, it's enough. That's senior.
Yeah. And, when you get older and again, nearing your 40s or a little bit over it, again, not disclosing our age, you meet a lot of like younger engineers. Some of them, like one I worked recently with, he's super smart. So like really, really smart. He picks up topics like over a weekend and now he's like a Terraform expert or whatever after like 2 days. He expect actually to be a senior engineer after like 3 years working and then like nearing or like becoming a principal, whatever you want to call it, a staff engineer nowadays after 5 years. So then I'm thinking, okay, first of all, it's not about technical skills. And secondly, what do you expect when you start working and become after 5 years or like reach the end of the ladder? What do you expect for the rest of your career? What are you going to do? Do you change tracks? Do you become a manager? Obviously not. And that's actually the point why I want to talk about it. Because I think for me personally, it's not important, but I know a lot of companies for whom it's important. And this year I started to work for an American company. And I realized, okay, they are like on a total different level and totally different.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. And especially if you are comparing yourself on the market, on the working market, and you need some kind of classification to position yourself on this market, then of course this kind of labeling makes sense. And I know people who are in the process of leaving their company and they say, hey, by the way, I need a promotion because only then they can talk to their future manager about a higher salary, right? Because they say, okay, no, I'm not a senior anymore. Now I'm a principal. And so this means I need 15% more of a salary, right?
Yeah, totally. And again, in the US, this is about job security. It's not like in Europe or like especially in Germany, where we are both located, where you can't be fired or like that's you would need at least like 4 months firing to even find a new job, and being fired is nearly impossible. And that's true for like most European countries, actually. In the US, it's different. First of all, if you don't like what your boss is doing, you will leave the next day, but it's also the other way around.
Right.
So like with a title comes kind of job security, because everybody wants a principal engineer or like a super duper senior engineer.
Right. But on the other hand, of course, if you are a professional in the IT business, you know that seniority does not necessarily come with time. There are people who are 20 years in the business and they really, really deliver crappy work. And so it's really dangerous to put something like this rank of a senior engineer on the time that you spend on your keyboard. Because it does not necessarily mean that you are better at your work. And so with most of these things, this is just like a empty label. Yeah, and you always have to take a look behind the curtains to see what the actual qualities of these people are. Yeah, and one story from my time when I was recruiting people was also that whenever I talked to a headhunter, for example, and he asked me, what kind of developers do you like, or who you're searching for? And usually I say something like, I need social intelligence and people with good communication skills and intrinsic motivations, because this is actually what I believe makes a good engineer. And usually they say, I don't care. But do you need Java developers? Do you need C developers? Give me something like Python. I have 5 great Python guys, right? And usually those hard skills, of course, they are nice to have. But from my point of view, the number of programming languages that you're speaking or that you're proficient at, it's again not necessarily a good metric for being a high-level senior engineer. Yeah, but usually this is very hard to put into your Excel sheet, and that's why especially recruiters, they don't want to hear about that. They just want to have like 5 stars in Java and 3 stars in JavaScript, and this is like the profile that we are trying to match.
Yeah. Totally agree with you here. And I also would say it's not only the recruiters. Obviously, these things are really hard to judge for a recruiter who just wants to like make his provision. It's also like with the younger engineers. So again, they are like, oh, I'm so good, make me senior whatsoever. And then I'm telling them, okay, seniority is something different, you know. It's with craftsmanship. Like your woodworker, you would not call any of them senior if he's not teaching others how their craft actually works. And that's what's an important part for me from being senior, like a senior engineer. You are not just a good engineer, then you're an intermediate engineer, or generally speaking, a good engineer. But seniority comes from your actually skill to teach others, to communicate. And I think that's what the difference between a good engineer, intermediate, and a senior engineer: communication skills, and also like obviously social skills. It's in the same bucket for me, because you need to communicate to management ideas and other things. And the other important aspect is actually understanding business. So I'm a big fan of domain-driven design, and one of the like basic ideas is that working software is only a byproduct to achieving business goals. And that's a thing most young engineers don't want to hear. They want technical excellence. Oh, we need to refactor this. We need to use framework XYZ. It's 5% faster. Okay, but there's no business value in there. And that's like a thing you need as a senior engineer, understanding what is a business requirement. And that, like, I mean, I love developing stuff. In my free time, I'm building just stupid things out of fun. But when I work, obviously, seniority means I understand that what I do has no value in itself, but the value comes from my skills creating business value and opportunities.
Yeah.
And the other aspect is I can communicate my ideas. It's not like an intermediate engineer saying, yeah, we need to move to GCP and Dockerize everything because it's the thing you do. Because then business will say, okay, you want like 2 years worth of engineering power to do what again and why?
Yeah. No, I totally love this, especially because this opens up the question of what are you actually doing in your job? And the answer of most developers that I know is, yeah, I'm developing software and I'm building stuff. But that's not really true. Usually you are creating a product and you have something where you're trying to earn money with, and not like you and your salary, but the company that you're working for. And so usually you're not a software developer, you're a product developer, and you are successful if your product is successful. And this is one thing that so many developers do not understand, that there's a direct dependency. And whenever they say to their client or to their boss, no, I do not want to do this because I want to use a different language, or no, the Scrum process says you are not allowed to talk to me because I have to follow the process because this is what I do as a software developer, right? It does not work this way. And this is exactly the behavior that shows that you might not be mature enough, or that you do not have this experience of actually understanding the business and what you're doing and what you're working towards.
Yes, totally agree. So, which reminds me, you also were a CTO in your past. So this is also kind of an important title. So for younger people I met, it's either I want to be senior, I want to be, back in the day, software architect, which is a term not used anymore. Nowadays it's dev engineer, or like principal engineer, which is kind of the modern take for me on a software architect with a different twist. And later, obviously, be CTO. That's the goal. I think I love the Netflix culture code, because they say we are like a professional sports team and everyone wants to play on the first line, be on the starting bracket, whatever. So that's a goal of each professional sports player. It should be the same for software engineers. So obviously each young engineer should aim to be senior, or should aim to be a CTO. It's just a question why. Sometimes it's just, I want this fancy title. And it makes more sense in the US with job security and other things, because then you are more valuable. It's for your CV. But in the end, the question is, when you become CTO, like for example you did, next step after senior, does titles actually lose their value?
Maybe it actually is this way. And I understand because when I was a junior developer, I had exactly the same thoughts. You identify yourself with the title that you are wearing. And if you have a business card and on the business card you have like the senior engineer or CTO printed, then you feel good because you wear it like a badge. This is something that I work towards and I earned this title. And when you're on a conference or something, you present your card and this is you. And maybe it actually is this way, that after I worked for a while in this role and I learned that this does not really mean anything, but it's simply a label for something that you might not even want to be, because you want to develop software and you do not want to like manage people or manage stakeholders or something like that, that it loses the value or the this drive towards this empty title. Yeah, and maybe this was actually the time when I was reflecting on what I want to do, and the thing that I'm doing right now, completely without titles, is way more fun than being a senior C-level manager. Yeah, I can't speak for every C-level manager, but for me, I had a lot of things that I had to do without wanting them to do, because I had to fill out things for taxes and inquiries and due diligence, and I had to hire a lot of people and steer contractors and that stuff. And this is not why I became a software engineer. And if I take a look at what I'm doing right now, building prototypes and evaluate technologies, this is so much fun. And it did not require a senior principal expert development title on a C-level or something like that. Vice president of amazing product development stuff. I don't need that. Yeah. But of course, you probably are only able to say this after you tried it or after you touched it. Yeah. And then you know, okay, I was there, I did not like it, and now I can go forward.
But this is a very fair point. So like trying stuff, like trying management and realizing this is not for me. So for me, you said due diligence and like HR recruiting people. I also realized this is more like a hobby of me. So I like it. I like reading about it, but it should not be my full-time job.
It's
so
your
I totally
hobby?
Understand.
It's your hobby to hire people?
Yes, I always tell people like HR is my hobby. So I like to do it sometimes but I don't want to do it like full-time, you know? Yes, sure. I really love talking to new people, meeting new developers, thinking about strategies, how my company actually could attract them.
Yeah.
One point I want to add is actually often it's about money. So when you like go from like normal engineer to senior to staff, whatever. It's actually about money. And obviously we all want more for the time we invest to get out more money. I love fancy stuff like new gear, new camera, new microphone, new laptop, and all other fancy things we engineers love. So being a senior in most companies I worked for was also coupled to being or like getting more money. And that was the actually step. And back in the days, it was if you wanted make the most money, you needed to be a manager. And I'm so glad that these times are over and there's this American model of like an individual contributor who gets as much money and has a parallel track to the management track, that both tracks are actually worth the same, also now comes to Europe, because that's a thing I really hated. So one reason why I became a manager is also because I wanted to make more money, obviously. And I had a really great leader. Art, you're still like kind of a mentor for me. Greetings from here, if you ever hear this podcast. So
I'm sure he will.
I hope he will. He taught me so much, especially in 2015. So that was also when I moved down from being a senior engineer and joined another company and just became a software engineer because everybody was a software engineer. So that was also like an experience I had in 2015, being kind of promoted, but getting more money. And that's the reason why it was fine. I made like 20% more money by joining jobs just with a worse title. But we had other people also, we were like 30, 40 engineers who often ask, I want a promotion. And then Art asked, is it about the promotion or is it like about money or your tasks? And it was never about title or promotion. It was always like, actually, it's about money. So I would say 95% of the people asking about a promotion were actually asking about, I want more money. And so everybody stayed software engineer and nobody got promoted. And there were only like some specific cases where they did not like the task they worked on. So obviously you can change teams or come up with, maybe you can do my prototypes, for example, right?
Yeah, right. And this is actually a very interesting example. If people have choice, and I also know this example where someone actually asks for money and the manager says, no, we don't have enough budget to raise your money, but I can give you a title. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, I take the title, even though it's about the money. And then you get forced to a promotion so that you can get something out of your review meeting, but there's no budget for it. Or the other way around, you get promoted because your manager needs you to actually do more work, and there's no more money involved. And then it's actually a very bad deal. You get the entitlement to do more work or better work, and you are forced to this because as a senior developer, of course, you're not allowed to do make any mistakes anymore. And now you have at the side to train 5 junior developers, and you have to go to a conference and do sales pitches for our company. Yeah, but do you get more money? No. Then technically you should just say, no, maybe I want to stay at my old position if I get the same amount of money.
I know at least one person who would disagree with you.
Really?
So yes. He's like, okay, if you join a new company, you get a package, like a total compensation package. And title can be one of the things you get. Because as we already talked about, if you are at least once like a principal engineer, you will be most likely hired again as a principal engineer and get more money. So this is, even if you don't get in the current job more, maybe in the next one. So because it makes your CV more attractive. I would even go so far to say that specific titles are like blue blood. You become a royal. So if you were once a manager or like even a CTO, you're entitled to like multiple kind of jobs. So this was back in the days, I also like aimed for a big career in tech. So nowadays I would not be able to tell you what is a big career in tech, but then I wanted to be a team lead. And applied for different team lead positions, and they said, you don't have experience and stuff and so on. But this is mainly because I did not have kind of a title. Later on, when I had a fancy title, I will not disclose which one, but my experience was not really different. I was the same person. I did not manage any team. I actually did the same work before, just had a fancy title and applied again. And it was, it's only team lead. You can be engineering manager for 3 teams. And this is, okay, just like a fancy title changed how other companies saw me and completely changed the options I had for my next job. So yes, and that's a thing like the guy told me, even you can negotiate for a fancy title and think of it as an investment in the future, because later on you will make more money because you had a fancy title, even if you don't get more money now.
It's true. And basically what you're describing is something like a decoration. Yeah, you decorate yourself with like a new hat or a new shirt or a new title, and this makes you more attractive, even though it does not necessarily change who you are as a developer or what your skills actually bring. And so this can also be dangerous, because you might have this fancy title and people imagine what it means, because if you in the past you were a principal engineer, then I assume that you are proficient in training junior developers, right? Because I believe this should be the case. But maybe in the past you simply got this title and you never worked with junior developers in your life, because I don't know, your previous employer simply needed someone to be a principal engineer so that he can sell you, right? So in the long run, I think it can also be quite dangerous to rely too much on this kind of decoration. And I believe that, especially with the next generation, the Generation Z, I observe very often that things that titles, they lose their magic, because people more and more often say, okay, I prefer something like a 4-day work week instead of the promotion. Yeah, and I actually do not want to have more money. I want to have more flexibility and the ability to work from home, for example. So the values also shift a little bit, and it might happen that this whole game that we are playing with decorating ourselves with meaningful or non-meaningful titles might change in the future.
Yeah. About Gen whatever it actually is, ZXY, I don't know, 0, I still don't know. I heard you are like a TikTok star in secret, just mentioning it.
Sure, yeah. Visit me at Fun with Facts on TikTok. Yeah, I mean, this is also an experiment. Yeah, it's not it's not like I'm getting old and now I have to prove that I'm still young by doing dances on TikTok. No, but it's a new way of consuming media. And even though YouTube is still around and was around for a long time, TikTok is now the platform where a lot of things are happening. And I believe that we need to have a look at what this generational change of media consumption and culture on the workplace brings with it. And I'm totally interested in the way we all change our behavior. And now, okay, the pandemic that we are living in has nothing to do with generational change. But these things that people were laughing about in the past, like working from home full time, or actually having flexible working hours and doing some work on the weekend and at the same time skipping some working hours during the week. It sounded so crazy in the past, and today we all proved that it actually works. And I prefer working this way. And I believe that there will be more changes coming. And I'm working now for almost 5 years as a innovation engineer without any rank in it. And I did not miss it for a day. And so I completely understand if someone says, I do not need this kind of decoration in my job title, because it does not mean anything. And we all hope, or people who share this opinion hope, that there will not be a new wave of people who say, okay, you can't apply for this job unless you actually bring this title with you. Yeah, kind of like a university degree. It shows that something happened in your past and you visited the university and you learned some stuff, but it is not necessarily something that guarantees the quality of your work or guarantees what is happening in your head. You can also be a skilled worker and a skilled developer and a skilled engineer, even if you don't have a doctor title.
Yeah, totally agree. So one thing I want to add to like TikTok, I also think that like thinking and testing out new stuff is part of being kind of an innovation engineer, because This is where innovation happens. So it would be really strange if we would not test out this format.
Of course.
And the other thing is, I'm so happy that these times that you need to be a manager to make more money are over, because I learned I don't want to be a manager. I'm so happy I can be like an engineer without any like disciplinary responsibilities, and I love my job and I love working that way. That's totally cool. On the other hand, I know that the European market is following the US quite often. And the trends I observed in the US in the past, and nowadays I can really see them really close up because I work for an American company, is actually the opposite, that it becomes more strict, more hierarchic, and even different. So one of the companies I worked 2-3 years ago added a new title. It was staff engineer. So it was a quite uncommon title in Berlin 3-4 years ago. And they only added it because some engineer complained, wanted a more fancier title because senior was not good enough. And yeah, it's an American title. They use it, don't know what it means actually. Let's just make him staff engineer. So I can tell you it was a company with around 200 engineers. The first 3 staff engineers were definitely, by any definition, they would not fit as a staff engineer. They were normal engineers without ever having written a blog article, done any talk, or coached anybody. They were just good engineers, with a lot of experience, but still only an engineer.
Yeah.
And what I see with American companies is their levels. So the level system. So, and now that I work for one, I was shocked how strict this level system is. It's oh my God, this is insane. So there's this awesome website, if you want to know about it. There's FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, who defined those levels.
Wow.
So normally, yeah. So normally you had P1, P2, P3, which is junior engineer, intermediate, senior. And the newer levels, they start at kind of P4. That's the next level. And they go up to 12. So, and there are for Google, for example, there's a thing called Engineer 2, which is not second level, by the way. Engineer 2 is way above already. And if you go to levels.fyi, you can check them. But there is really a job listing for Engineer 2 or 3, which requires you to be or to have worked as an Engineer 2 before. So you can apply as Engineer 2, Engineer 3. And they're very strict about it. So what? You were an intermediate engineer, you cannot apply for Engineering 2. And this goes up to I don't know what. So check the website to see it, because there is staff engineer, senior staff engineer, principal engineer, distinguished engineer. And if you say distinguished engineer in a European company, they will ask you, what? Sorry, what?
Yeah. But it's fascinating. Is this about money? Is it about responsibilities? Or why am I fighting through these layers of promotion? So what actually does it mean to be a level 5 something engineer?
Yeah, again, this is a university degree. So they aligned on the system introduced by FANG, and other companies are also using it. For example, GitLab, the open source kind of not really open source, the free alternative to GitHub. They have open sourced their whole career path.
Okay, I see.
It's all the levels are also in there, and there's a really big definition also from Google. You can just go to the Google career path and see what makes an engineer 2. And there's does talks, is doing this, is coaching staff, and so on. So it's defined very strictly per level. And the thing is, if you worked as an engineer 2 at another company, this is proof that you have this kind of skills. So again, the things you don't want to see, again, this kind of, I need to prove in my career to get a specific position. This is, in my opinion, a trend in the US right now. And I really hope it does not come that way to Europe, because I also said to them, get rid of this job listing, engineer 2, 3. So you have so many job listings. That's insane. Just try to hire good people and then see where they fit. And that's the thing most US companies don't do.
Yeah, that's true. And even though it's always weird or not weird, but kind of risky to talk about or talking against something that Google or Facebook is bringing to the market, because usually they are very powerful and have a lot of influence. But if a junior developer asks me, or any developer asks me for one advice, how to become a better developer or a senior developer, I usually refer them to the book, the Clean Coder from Robert Martin. And this book is, especially for me, something like a code of conduct. And I think Robert Martin actually calls this book a code of conduct himself, for the behavior of a experienced and senior developer. And back then, when I was a CTO, every developer who I hired, I bought this book and I sent it to him before his first day of work. And I told him it was like a welcome present, and I really really liked it because this was the things that I was expecting from them, not knowing Python or Java and everything without making a mistake, but actually understanding what it means to be a professional developer. And this code of conduct, it describes in very, very interesting examples the relationship between the client and the developer, for example, and how processes help you structure your work and are not supposed to make a work worse. And this kind of self-reflection, why you're doing the things you're doing, and what's the right way of behave. So if this is one book that I can recommend anyone who watches this podcast or listening to this podcast, it's The Clean Coder by Robert Martin. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that book. I love books in general, and I read way too much engineering books. I have even staples of books I want to recommend other people, and I'm so into books that I did at least 2 or 3 talks about books engineers should read. But the book I normally gave to not people I hired, but people I coach is The Lean Startup. And the reason, especially engineers, is that I want to prove the point to them: you're not paid to write code; you're paid to grow a business.
Yes.
And the methods described in there, that's the things you should strive for. Like fake it until you make it. There's a lot of capitals in the book, The Lean Startup, about not build it with examples, but just try it out differently. That's a mentality I try to bring into engineers, because when I'm asking how long will it take to try this stuff, we need to change this, build a new component, I would say 6 months. They're or we just use any simple A/B testing tool and fake the JavaScript and just write it into any open database for 5,000 customers.
Yeah. It's always a matter of mindset. That's so true. And people need to be aligned on what they are focusing on and what they are building. And it's kind of a disease that people have their ego in front of themselves and are working simply for their title and for their own comfort, and completely ignore that there's something that they're actually building, like a product or a company. And so I'm totally with this. It's all a question of mindset.
There's a setting I use quite often to make this point more clear. A senior engineer, he loves a problem, not the solution, and especially not the solution he did build.
Yeah.
And also to go into when I get asked what makes a senior engineer, I normally say it's first communication skills. And you acquire them not by writing code, you acquire them by writing blog posts, teaching people. Because when you need to teach someone, you need to improve how you explain stuff. You need to improve your explanation skills and so on. And you need a deeper understanding. And this also means doing public talks. That's why in each company I work for, I try to get different levels of formats for doing presentations, within a team, because a lot of engineers, especially younger ones, are inexperienced, they are shy, they don't want to get onto a stage. So you need a low-level entry barrier for them, where they just explain stuff before 5 people. That's what I do with my current team, for example, doing internal talks, even if we have each second week with the whole company, kind of 90 minutes of tech and architecture, where we do internal talks about what's new in Vue, how this tail would work whatsoever, and also sponsoring, going to conferences, do talks there, because this is different things. And I also remember the first time I was on a real stage. So I did already do a lot of talks internally for my team and so on, because I always liked talking. But the first time I went on a stage and all the lights were shining on me, everything was kind of black and I was blinded by the light because my glasses were kind of dirty and it was really a reflection on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here on the stage? I felt so lonely actually up there. That's a feeling you need to actually learn how to deal with, standing in front of others and talking.
Right. I mean, of course, it's not for everyone. There are good developers who simply do not enjoy doing this, and they don't want to, and you can't make them. But I'm totally with you that one of the most important skills of everyone who tries to become a leader in his field, not a manager, but a leader in his field, needs to go through this path of teaching someone, because you can only improve so far on what you're producing, and at some point of time you need to make the switch of actually teaching someone your skills, and this is like a evolutionary step in your self-development.
Yeah. But I would say it's impossible. For example, let's take again the American levels. Becoming a staff engineer, where you're responsible for like strategic planning of different components, it's impossible without good presentation skills.
Yeah.
So anybody who does not want to do talks, in my opinion, he cannot become a staff engineer, because like doing talks in front of management, understanding like business, and doing a lot of presentations, and doing good ones actually, also in front of maybe customers, stakeholders, whatsoever, that's a required skill for a staff engineer. So there's only so much up in the hierarchy, or like in the skill sets you can go without doing talks.
Yeah,
or presentations.
And the presentations are only one aspect. Usually, if you see someone and he gives a very, very bad presentation, it's often not because he's too nervous or uncomfortable, but because he's unstructured, and he has not the ability of formulating what he's thinking and trying to transport this information from his head to another person's head. And so it's not necessarily the skill of standing on a stage, but if you sit next to him and you ask him about, tell me about the problem that you're working with, or show me how you structure your solution, and he's not able to actually explain to you what he's doing, then this is exactly the skill that he's missing. Structuring his thoughts, creating a kind of presentation of his way of thinking, and motivate you to understand the way that he tries to solve this problem. And this is exactly what you're practicing when you create your slide deck in PowerPoint. It doesn't need to be PowerPoint, but there are so bad presentations, and this has nothing to do with your ability to speak on the stage. It's the way you structure your information, the way that you know people will absorb the things that you throw to them. And if you simply copy and paste, the documentation into bullet points on your slides, and you expect people to learn from that, then there's your first problem. And this is exactly what you need to train and to practice. Yeah.
If I'm going to ever write a blog post about what makes a senior engineer, I will quote exactly what you just said, because it's totally on point.
Okay. I think it's time to wrap up, right?
Sure. If you have other cool topics we could talk about, like being a senior engineer, then let's wrap up.
Yeah, that's a me challenge. I have so much more to tell you.
Yeah, I still want you to be senior innovation engineer. I'm waiting until you get the senior title. You know what? This would be the next step in your career.
But that's so funny, because I expect the moment that I go to my superior and say, I think I want to be a senior innovation engineer, they know I'm going to quit my job in 3 months. And I'm preparing my CV for my next employer.
Yeah. The funny thing is, for the last 2 employments I had, I did not choose any title. I just they both choose like principal engineer. So I don't care. They ask me, what title? I don't care. Then they just wrote principal engineer in my job contract.
Yeah.
That's how I actually became principal engineer, twice already.
By force. You have no choice.
Yeah, because I didn't care. I said, that's the money I want. That's the stuff I want to work on. And that's it for me.
Yeah. Okay. So everyone who's listening, thank you so much for joining us. And I would be so interested in learning what you think about this idea of job titles, senior engineer, principal engineer, and maybe even your own personal experience of climbing this ladder and decorating yourself with titles. So please leave us a comment. And if you have other topics that you want to have us discussed in this podcast, also leave us a comment. Vashi, anything else to add?
Yes, obviously. Next week on the same spot, we will talk about the hottest topic right now. That's obviously self-organizing teams and if they are killing your business. Okay. So see you again next time. I have
so much to say about this topic.
Yeah, I can't wait. I just want to start talking about it right now.
Exactly. Okay, yeah, then thank you very much and have a nice afternoon. Bye.
Bye.